we've spent most of our genetic existence honing our relationship to nutrition in a scarcity environment. So the prioritization was on storage, and the prioritization was on avoiding calamitous outcomes. Starvation will kill you quickly. Overabundance of nutrition will kill you very, very slowly. So given that we're in a world where most people are overexposed to nutrition, it's presenting us with a whole bunch of new problems that evolution didn't really have a chance to prepare for. And so we now have to come up with solutions that might seem counterintuitive or counter to our evolutionary desires.
So nutrition has, in our space, become very difficult to have a sane conversation around for all the reasons. And I appreciate that you stay out of that. With that said, I am curious, like, what is your personal philosophy? How do you eat? What does Peter eat?
Well, again, my philosophy is it always starts with three questions. So if I'm looking at a person and trying to figure out or help them figure out how they ought to be eating, I want to know if they're undernourished or overnourished. So are they carrying excess energy or not? This is a very important first question. And sometimes that's just a parent looking at a person, but a lot of times it's not. A lot of times you have to go a little bit deeper and do a DEXA scan and actually look at stores of visceral fat and body fat and things like that. So let's acknowledge that it sometimes is really clear that a person is over or undernourished, and sometimes it's not. But that's a knowable question. The next question is, are they over or under muscled? And I would really think of no one being over muscled. So I reframe that as, are you adequately muscled or under muscled? And again, sometimes that's just a parent looking at a person, but usually we don't leave that to the eye, and we use a DEXA scan to tell us. And we use something called the appendicular lean mass index or the fat-free mass index, where we very objectively look at the amount of muscle mass or lean mass that they have, and we put it on a nomogram that is percentiled by their sex and age. And we like to see people, we would consider adequately muscled to be 75th percentile and higher. And that's based on the data that are pretty unambiguous about the longevity and health benefits of having adequate muscle mass. So again, second question, are you at or above the 75th percentile for muscle mass or not? And then the third question is, are you metabolically healthy or not? And again, that's gathered by looking at triglycerides and homocysteine and insulin, glucose, oral glucose tolerance tests, all sorts of things. So when you have answers to those three questions, then you have a plan in place for nutrition. And the first order question is, do you need to reduce intake, yes or no, relative to current baseline? That's a very important question. Do you need to eat more, the same, or less? Most people end up in the less category.
Well, let's say for someone who's, I would say, probably healthy, doing all of the quote unquote right things, and probably wants to gain some lean muscle mass. And we'll segue to exercise. And I'm in this camp. I would say I'm probably adequately muscled, but, maintaining and building lean muscle mass has been a priority for me. And I think this is at the forefront of the health and wellness conversation right now. I think a lot of people are waking up and saying, oh, wow, you know what? I wish I had a little bit more lean muscle mass for all the reasons you point out in the book, and we'll touch on. And so for someone like me, which I'm assuming a lot of our listeners are, and a lot of them are going to be female as well, relatively healthy, they don't have an overnourished problem, possibly undernourished when it comes to protein. So for that person, that archetype, if you will.
Yeah, so we start with protein, right? Protein is the most important macronutrient in that regard, and the one that probably requires the most attention in eating. The RDA, which is the recommended dietary allowance, is misleading, and frankly, it's incorrect. So the RDA stipulates something to the tune of 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And that has been misinterpreted as the ideal amount of protein intake. when in reality, it's sort of the bare minimum to not wither away. But the scenario you're describing, and presumably the scenario most people find themselves in, is they want to thrive. They're not looking to not, they're not in the how do I not die tomorrow camp. They're in the how do I like be my best self camp. And there we're talking about at least 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, and frankly, up to about 2.2. So I'm at the higher end of that spectrum, just because I'm more active. And as a person gets older, they experience something called anabolic resistance. We need to push them to the higher end of that spectrum. So we kind of tell patients, look, you really want to be in the 1.5 to 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight camp. And you want to be getting that spread out over 3 to 4 servings per day. And there's biochemical reasons why that's necessary that we can get into if you want, but I've discussed them on previous podcasts if people want to go down that rabbit hole.
And we've also, we've had Don Lehman on our show, who you've had as well, who goes down the rabbit hole of leucine and protein. And I encourage everyone to go to the show notes.
Don is incredible.
All the amino acids.
Yeah, Don's amazing.
And so coming back, something I'm curious how you do that. I'm curious what Peter puts in his smoothie when Peter's trying to get that 3 p.m. protein, and you just gotta like shove something down. That's something, for context, this, we've met, it's been a while, but I'm 6'7". I'm 210 pounds. That's a lot of protein. And I struggle with it sometimes. I'm curious, what do you do when you just gotta figure out a way how to ingest some protein?
Yeah, well, it's actually surprisingly consistent from day to day. I mean, I'm not really trying to recreate the wheel every day. So I like eggs. I do have I'm happy to talk about how I make my eggs, how I make my protein shakes, what my go-to protein snack is every single day. So that's 3 right there. And then dinner, which is the easiest one to hit because dinner is just such an easy meal to eat. And I'm just going to rotate through different types of meat or fish at dinner. So I'm always going to, I'm basically just trying to get about 45 grams of protein per serving and 4 servings per day. So it's really easy to get that at dinner. That requires no attention. The other 3 just require being a little bit deliberate with timing and delivery. So eggs, I always make kind of 7 to 8. And because I'm not trying to put on calories, like half of that is just white. So it's like 8 egg whites and 4 yolks gives me the right dose. My favorite snack is venison sticks. So full disclosure, I'm a investor in a company called Maui Nui Venison, and they make just hands down the best sort of venison products imaginable. And so they make these jerky sticks that are just great. I love the taste, and there's nothing in them but, venison and pepper basically. So each stick is 9.8 grams. So call it 10. So I'll have 5 of those sticks as a snack. That's what I had just before we did our call today. And then a protein shake for me is 50 grams of whey protein in some cashew milk and a few frozen berries and a banana or something like that. So relatively low in calories, but just, very high in protein.